Urgent Australia! From May 20th, three major road rule changes could affect every driver, and one mistake could cost you big fines or even your license. But that's not all. Australian retirees are also facing new age pension payment updates and growing concerns about the pension crisis that mainstream media isn't fully explaining. Stay with me until the end because these changes could directly impact your daily life, your money, and your retirement. Subscribe now and join our Australia-focused community for the latest age pension updates, Centrelink news, retirement alerts, and important government changes made specially for Australians. If you're driving on Australian roads right now, you need to stop what you're doing and pay very close attention to what I'm about to tell you, because what kicks in from May 20th could cost you hundreds or even thousands of dollars if you're not prepared. We're talking about real, enforceable law changes that have already begun rolling out and are going to affect every single driver in this country, whether you're cruising through the CBD, hitting the highway on a road trip, or just doing the school run on a Tuesday morning. These are not rumors. These are not proposals sitting in a government committee gathering dust. These are active changes to Australian road law, and the consequences of ignoring them are serious. So let's get into it. Let's start with the one that kicked things off, the breakdown vehicle rule. Now, you might think you already know what to do when you see a tow truck pulled over on the side of the road. You slow down a little, maybe move lanes if you can, give the worker a bit of space. But what's coming into effect changes things significantly, and here's the part that catches most people completely off guard. The speed you are now legally required to drop to is 25 kilometers per hour. Not 40, not 30, 25. And this is not just a suggestion or a courtesy, this is the law, and failure to comply carries fines that will make your stomach drop. Think about that for a second. 25 kilometers per hour. That's barely faster than a jogger on a good day, and it applies specifically when you are passing a stationary breakdown service vehicle, a tow truck, a roadside assistance van, any vehicle that has stopped and has its amber lights flashing. The reason this rule exists is gut-wrenching when you think about it. Roadside workers, the people who come out in the dead of night or in the blazing midday heat to help stranded motorists, are among the most vulnerable workers in the entire country. They're standing on the side of live roads, often with cars blasting past at full speed, just centimeters away. Tragically, there have been incidents in Australia where these workers have been killed or seriously injured because drivers didn't slow down or didn't pay attention. This law is a direct response to that reality. Now, here's where it gets really important to understand the details, because the specifics matter enormously when it comes to whether you get fined or not. This 25 km per hour rule applies on multi-lane roads. So if you're on a multi-lane road, think a freeway, a dual carriageway, a busy arterial road with 2 or more lanes going in the same direction, and you see a breakdown service vehicle stopped with its amber lights flashing, you must reduce your speed to 25 kilometers per hour as you pass. The rule also extends to situations where the breakdown worker has placed road bollards or cones around the vehicle. So even if the truck itself isn't directly in your line of sight, those cones are a legal trigger. There is one important exception. If the breakdown vehicle is on the opposite side of a divided road from you, the rule doesn't apply. But don't let that exception tempt you into complacency, because getting that judgment wrong is an expensive mistake. And expensive is putting it mildly. In South Australia, where this specific 25-kilometer limit is being enforced from May 2025, non-compliance can attract fines and significant demerit point penalties. We're talking about the kind of fine that ruins your month and the kind of demerit hit that, if you're already on a thin margin, could threaten your license. Victoria has its own version of this rule. Over there, drivers must slow to 40 kilometers per hour when passing any police vehicle, tow truck, or emergency response vehicle with its lights on or sirens going. And that rule now applies on all roads, including freeways. Whether it's 25 or 40, depending on your state, the core message is the same. When you see those flashing lights on a stationary vehicle by the roadside, your foot needs to come off that accelerator, hard and fast. No debates, No quick judgment calls about whether the worker is close enough to the traffic lane to warrant slowing. Slow down. Full stop. Because this is no longer just about being a decent human being, though it absolutely is that too. It is now the law. Let me paint you a picture of just how easily this can go wrong. You're on the highway, it's a busy morning, you're running 5 minutes late, the traffic is moving, and you spot a tow truck with its lights going on the left shoulder. You're in the right lane, you think you're well clear, and you keep your speed up. You don't see the camera. You don't see the officer parked further up. And 2 weeks later, an infringement notice arrives in your letterbox. That scenario is going to play out for thousands of Australians who simply didn't know about this change, or who knew about it in a vague way but didn't think it would actually apply to their specific situation in that specific moment. Don't be that person. This is one of those rules where awareness is everything. And now you have it. Let's move on to the second massive change that is sweeping across Australian roads. And this one might be the most technologically significant shift in traffic enforcement this country has ever seen. We're talking about the rollout of AI-powered surveillance cameras that are being expanded and enhanced to detect not just speeding, which cameras have been doing for years, but also mobile phone use and seatbelt violations. And they are frighteningly good at it. This is not a future plan. This is happening now, and in states like New South Wales, Victoria, and Western Australia, these systems are either already live or being rapidly expanded in mid-2025. Here's why this is such a seismic shift. Old enforcement relied largely on police officers physically spotting a driver holding their phone. That meant your odds of getting caught depended partly on whether a cop happened to be in the right place at the right time with a clear line of sight to your hand. You probably knew drivers, maybe you were one of them, who thought they could get away with a quick glance at their phone or a fast text at the lights because the chances of being seen felt manageable. Those days are over. These new AI cameras use high-definition imaging, machine learning, and real-time analysis to identify illegal phone use across multiple lanes simultaneously, in any weather, at any time of day or night. The camera doesn't blink. The camera doesn't get distracted. The camera doesn't take a lunch break. And, critically, it can detect phone interaction even when you think you're being subtle about it. And the penalties? They are genuinely severe. In New South Wales, getting caught using your mobile phone illegally while driving carries a fine of up to $1,209 and 5 demerit points. 5 demerit points in a single hit is enormous. For a P-plater, or someone who is already sitting close to their demerit threshold, that is a license suspension waiting to happen. Let that number sit with you for a moment. Over $1,200 and 5 demerit points for picking up your phone. That's not a slap on the wrist. That's a financial gut punch. And it's designed to be exactly that. A deterrent powerful enough to actually change behaviour. In Western Australia, the fine for mobile phone use behind the wheel can reach up to $700 with 5 demerit points. Across different states, the exact numbers shift, but the direction is the same. Up, significantly. What makes the camera system even more confronting is its scope. These cameras are not just watching for phones. They are also now being used to detect seatbelt violations. In the ACT, new legislation passed in 2025 specifically enables these traffic camera networks to capture images of drivers and front seat passengers who are not wearing their seatbelts correctly. And the driver is held responsible for their passengers' compliance, too. So if you're in Canberra and your mate in the passenger seat has their belt draped loosely over their shoulder instead of properly buckled, you're the one who wears the fine. In NSW, this dual enforcement model, catching both phones and seatbelts with the same camera network, is being rolled out in earnest. The cameras work in all conditions, and they can monitor multiple lanes at once. This is a whole new enforcement reality, and the sooner Australian drivers truly internalize that, the better. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. I only use my phone at red lights. Surely that's okay. No, absolutely not. This is one of the most persistent myths about mobile phone laws in Australia, and it needs to be put to rest once and for all. In every Australian state and territory, if your vehicle is not parked, meaning the engine is off and you're not in a traffic lane, you are not permitted to use a handheld mobile device. Sitting at a red light counts as driving. Your car is still in a traffic lane. And the new AI cameras are specifically designed to catch people doing exactly this. The legal use of a phone while driving requires it to be in a properly mounted cradle, and even then, in most jurisdictions, you still cannot touch it to change settings, answer a call, or adjust navigation. Voice commands are your friend. Set everything up before you start moving, and leave it alone. The camera system doesn't care how briefly you touched the screen or how important the notification looked. And while we're on the subject of technology, let's touch on something that ties directly into both of the changes we've already discussed: average speed cameras. In New South Wales, these are being rolled out for light vehicles like passenger cars and motorcycles for the first time. Unlike point-to-point cameras that catch you at a single moment, average speed cameras use two fixed points along a stretch of road to calculate your average speed across the entire distance. This is significant because it eliminates the classic trick of braking before a known camera location and then accelerating again once you've passed it. With average speed cameras, your whole journey between those 2 points is being assessed. Between May 2025 and June 2026, NSW is trialing these systems on 2 sections of regional highways, and if the results are what the government is expecting, a much broader rollout will follow. The message is simple: consistent, legal speed for the whole journey, not just in the spots where you think you're being watched. The third change is one that reflects a broader, nationwide shift in how Australian governments are thinking about road safety, and it's about the way that speed limits themselves are being restructured in specific zones and locations. Across multiple states, we are seeing targeted speed limit reductions that are coming into effect in 2025, with more to follow. These aren't blanket changes to roads you've been driving on for years at the same speed. They're strategic, data-driven reductions in places that have been identified as higher risk, higher pedestrian, or higher consequence areas. In Queensland, tourist areas and high pedestrian zones are being dropped to 40 kilometers per hour. Parts of the Hervey Bay Esplanade, for example, are having their limits reduced from 50 to 40 kilometers per hour. In Western Australia, roads in the Margaret River region are seeing significant reductions, with some areas dropping from speeds between 70 and 110 kilometers per hour down to 60 kilometers per hour. And within the Augusta town centre specifically, there are now 40 kilometer per hour limits to protect pedestrians in that high foot traffic area. South Australia is expanding 40 km per hour time-based school zones on major arterial roads. These are the main roads that run alongside or near schools. And by the end of 2026, all identified school-adjacent arterial roads in the state will have these time-based limits in place during peak school hours. Now, the reason these specific limit changes matter so much, beyond the obvious safety implications, is because they're easy to miss if you're not paying attention. A road that you drove at 50 last week might be a 40 road next week. Signage will be updated, but in the transition period, drivers who aren't watching carefully are going to get caught. And with the AI camera networks we just talked about now actively monitoring for speed violations in addition to phones and seatbelts, the enforcement capacity has never been higher. You might think a 10 km per hour difference barely matters, but in a school zone or a pedestrian-heavy area, that difference is the difference between a pedestrian walking away from an incident and a pedestrian not walking away at all. The physics of collision at these speeds are stark. What ties all three of these changes together is a philosophy that Australian road authorities are committing to more aggressively than ever. The idea that driver behavior changes not when people feel guilty, but when the consequences of bad decisions become real, immediate, and inevitable. For years, a lot of risky behavior on Australian roads persisted because the chance of getting caught felt low. You might speed a little and get away with it 99 times. You might pick up your phone at the lights and never see a police officer. You might blow past a breakdown worker at full speed with no consequences. Each time that happened, the behavior got reinforced. The new approach, combining stricter laws with smarter, always-on technology, is designed to break that cycle of impunity. The camera is always there. The rule is always active. The fine is always on the table. Here's the thing that I want you to take away from this, beyond just the specifics of the rules themselves. Australia loses over 1,000 people on its roads every single year. That's a number that should shock us, but because it happens one at a time, spread across the country, across different communities, it can start to feel abstract. It isn't abstract. Every person in that number was someone's parent, child, partner, friend. Every one of those deaths had ripple effects that changed families forever. And a significant portion of those deaths were the result of exactly the behaviors that these new laws are targeting: distracted driving, failure to protect roadside workers, failure to observe appropriate speeds in high-risk areas. So yes, there are fines. Yes, there are demerit points. Yes, there is new technology watching the roads in ways that weren't possible 5 years ago. But underneath all of that infrastructure is a genuine, urgent effort to stop people from dying on roads that should be safe. So here's what you need to do right now, today, before you get behind the wheel again. Number 1, know the breakdown vehicle rule. When you see a stationary vehicle by the side of the road with amber or emergency lights flashing, you slow down. On multi-lane roads in South Australia, that means 25 kilometers per hour. In Victoria, it means 40 kilometers per hour when passing any vehicle with lights or sirens. Check your specific state's rules because the numbers vary, but the principle is universal. You slow, you give space, you protect the people who are out there trying to help. Number 2, put the phone away. In the cradle, properly mounted, with everything set up before you move. Don't touch it at lights, don't touch it in slow traffic, don't touch it at all while the engine is running and you're in a traffic lane. The AI cameras are not going to give you the benefit of the doubt, and neither will the fine notice that follows. And number 3, look for new signage in your regular routes, especially near schools, tourist areas, and coastal towns. Speed limits are changing in specific locations, and the map of where those changes have happened is growing month by month through 2025 and into 2026.